let's see. I believe my head is cut off. we did. That was pretty good, wasn't it? We did get set up in the time allotted, but boy, it was a stretch. At any rate, we obviously didn't get the cameras set up. A couple of weeks ago, one of you guys wrote in on the forum and were asking for the plans for a wind harp. I had made one of these a long time ago and wasn't all that satisfied with it. And they are lovely, lovely instruments. So Drew and I decided to make one and make some improvements and actually do some research and figure out how these things worked. So what I have behind me right here is a wind harp, also known as an aeolian harp. These have been around for a long time. The word aeolian comes from the Greek god of wind, Aeolus. And these harps are actually played by the wind. The wind, as it blows over the strings, causes them to oscillate. The strings, however, don't sound the note to which they're tuned. If I pluck this note, okay, you can hear that it's pretty low and kind of dead on this sound box. What happens is the strings oscillate and you hear their harmonic overtones. Instead of just vibrating back and forth with a standing parabolic wave, they form an S wave, and you hear the octave above that note. Sometimes you hear the third above that octave or the fifth above that octave. These harmonic overtones sound very eerie, and as the wind varies in speed slightly, the harmonic tones will change back and forth as if the notes were changing. Very strange sound. Drew's going to play you this particular wind harp. We taped this yesterday. Okay, as you can see, it has kind of a snappy beat, but you really can't dance to it. Nonetheless, it's worth having. This particular wind harp is nothing but a square box. The box, or the sound box, is made out of 1/8" boards glued together. It has the two ends. First of all, there are some peg blocks underneath here, hard maple peg blocks here and here to hold the pegs that hold the strings, and then the ends here support a wind scoop. Now, if you want to know something about the physics of the wind harp, I've put a little slight, just a short write-up on the blackboard that you can download. And one of the things that it will tell you is that the wind has to be going at a certain speed in order for the string to sound. So we put this wind scoop on here, and as you raise the wind scoop like this, the wind coming in is compressed, and according to Bernoulli's principle, starts to go much faster as the outlet for it gets narrower. So, in other words, you can, by moving this back and forth, you can adjust the speed of the wind so the strings will sound. The strings, I'm going to try to get here so you can see them, are held by hitch pins at one end and tuning pins on the other. You tune them with this little wrench here, turn the tuning pins. These are ordinary nylon guitar strings, all of different diameters. Let me try to get close enough that you can see these a little bit better. There we go. Okay, These are, yeah, there, I'm gonna show you the pins too. There we go. Those are the hitch pins. Ordinary nylon guitar strings. They're all tuned to the same note. Now the reason for this is, like I said, it's the harmonics that you hear, not the notes themselves. So you don't hear that one note droning on. You hear all these different harmonics, but the strings are of different diameters. Now the diameters will react, because they're different diameters. Different strings will react to different speeds of wind. So you may be listening to one or two or three strings playing at once, depending on the speed that you've adjusted this to. Now let me come over here and show you. Okay, let me get an angle just right. There we go. Those are the tuning pegs right there. That's how you tune these strings. Now if I move over here, notice that bridge or nut that the strings are stretched over. I have a piece of bone inlaid there between two pieces of bloodwood to make that nut nice looking. But notice that nut is pretty far from the tuning pins. If we go back here to the hitch pins, right there we go. The nut is much closer to the hitch pins. Okay, this nut is actually sitting over the peg block that you can't see inside this sound box. If you come back here, this nut is sitting over the air cavity. By making one of these nuts sit over the air cavity, just one, you get a much better tone out of the wind harp. Okay, let's come back to me. What we're going to do from here on out is we're going to show you a project, talk to you a little bit about the history and how the project may be made, some interesting things about it. But then we're going to take one, two, or maybe three techniques needed to make the project and show you how to do it. In this case, what we're going to show you is how we put together the corners of the wind harp. If you want to come in tight on one corner there, I'll show you. There we go. Okay. See, those are finger joints. All right. Now, normally you make finger joints in two boards that are exactly the same thickness. But in this case, we have a board that is 3/8 of an inch thick and another board that is 1/8 of an inch thick, and the fingers fit together like that. This is the joint that they form. Not only that, these fingers are all different sizes. The finger, actually, we say fingers, but really these are tenons, and the notches or gullets in between are mortises. The tenons on this finger, they start out, they're 1/2 inch wide, then they go out to 3/8 inches wide, and finally the tenons on the end are just 1/4 of an inch wide. So they sort of decrease as they go. Now you're used to making finger joints not only in boards that are the same thickness, but boards where you space the fingers out evenly. The tenons and the mortises are all exactly the same width. That's because that's an easy way to make them on a bandsaw. Or on a router table or a table saw. These are made with a bandsaw. I really like a bandsaw for making finger joints. You can do some really decorative things when you aren't constrained to just one thickness of wood or one width of tenon. Let's go over here. Well, wait, no, let's not go over to the bandsaw yet. I'm going to show you how to make these things, and we start by marking your wood. First thing we're going to do is we're going to mark the thickness using a marking gauge. These are our two adjoining boards right here. Okay, I'm going to join this uncut end to this portion over here, And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get the thickness of my board and adjust the marking gauge to that thickness. There we go. 3/8 of an inch, maybe a little bit more. You want them to be kind of proud. Now I'm going to take the marking gauge and I'm going to mark the thickness of the adjoining board on the 1/8 inch board. Great. Now I'll take this little square here and I'm going to mark the fingers. The middle finger is 1/2 inch wide. Going out to 3/8 inches wide. And then 1/4 of an inch on the end. I like to mark with a knife for the simple reason that it makes a nice crisp line. And that line remains the same width all through the marking process, and it's easy to follow when you're sawing. The other thing is it cuts the grain for you so that there's less tear out. All right. One last thing to do here. I am going to shade the wood between the tenons that I'm going to cut. I find this is an extremely important step. I cannot tell you how many times I have cut the tenons instead of the mortises. All right, let's go. Hang on, and the cameras will catch up with us. We're going to go over here to the bandsaw. Now, on this bandsaw, I've put the Shopsmith miter gauge, and using some carpet tape, I've attached a block of wood, just a piece of scrap wood, to the miter gauge, and in the scrap wood I've cut a kerf. And this kerf fits around the back of the bandsaw blade. You can see the bandsaw blade is actually pretty wide. I'm using a 5/8 inch blade here, and you're probably wondering how I'm going to turn the sharp little corners inside these mortises with such a wide blade. And the answer is I'm not gonna. We're going to nibble out these mortises. I'll show you how to do that here in a minute. First thing we're going to do is put my safety glasses on and turn this on. Okay, I've cut one tenon to the depth that I want. I'm going to bring we'll call it a stop block attached to the miter gauge forward so that it will stop all the successive cuts I make. And now I'm going to lock that down. Let me make sure that felt like it moved when I did that. No, it's pretty good. Okay. All right, stop block is set. And now we'll make the rest of the cuts. actually cutting sideways with the bandsaw. Because the teeth have a set to them, you can actually go back and forth like this, and the teeth will cut sideways. So what I've done there is I've eliminated most of the stock by just making repeated cuts, and then went back and forth. And as you can see, when I hold this up to the camera, there we go, that the shoulders of my tenons are perfectly straight. So now let's go back to the workbench for a minute. We'll cut and we'll do the next piece here. All right. This piece is 1/8 of an inch thick, so I'm going to reset my marking gauge for 1/8 of an inch. Mark the end here. You guys have never used a marking gauge before. These are great. You want not to hold the point straight up and down. You hold the point at a slight angle as you drag it across the wood. Now I'm going to line up my tenons that I just cut and mark and use my knife to mark them. Now this time I don't even have to resort to the square. Those are marked. Let's go back over here to the bandsaw. I'm going to have to move the miter gauge. So let me cut one tenon to the proper. Whoop, whoop. Almost made that mistake. Let me color in, shade in the parts that I'm going to cut out. Believe me, it gets confusing if you don't do that. Lock the miter gauge in place after setting the position of the stop block. Right there, and I'll get the tenons. Here we go. Moment of truth, and the truth will set you free. Okay, fits pretty well. So that's all it takes to make bandsawn finger joints. You can do this not only out of different thicknesses, but in all sorts of different progressions. I've made corners where you go from very skinny to very fat. You can make them at random. You can make it look so that the optical illusion is that it's actually curving in or bowing out by changing the progression and the way you do it. So, nice little trick here.